This is James Jackson. You can't see his expression here, so it's impossible to know what's going through his mind at this moment, just after he killed another person. This is the man he murdered, Timothy Kaufman. James Jackson didn't know Kaufman, who he was, where he was from. He killed him for the one thing he did know about him, that he was a black man. Late at night on March 20th, Jackson's victim, Timothy Kaufman, found himself on this corner in Manhattan, just half a block from where he lived for 20 years. At 66 and retired, Kaufman made a small amount of money by collecting cans and bottles to recycle. That night, he was looking through a trash can on this corner when James Jackson came up from behind and stabbed him multiple times before running off. Bleeding, Kaufman somehow managed to make his way to the police station around the corner. When he was taken to the hospital, he was pronounced dead.
When I heard it, I cringed and just felt that knife, you know.
Thing would hurt me, you know, his purpose. He said he'd come to kill many black men as he can.
Here's the obituary.
Portia Clark and Carl Nimmons knew Timothy Kaufman since they were children, growing up here in Queens, New York.
Oh, that's Beyonce.
That's Beyonce, yeah.
Tim had a knack for taking pictures with celebrities.
And he did it so much that they knew him.
Now check this out. During the last 15 years of his life, Timothy was a very frequent visitor to Washington, D.C., as he enjoyed attending the congressional hearings and budget policy sessions. Often, while he was collecting bottles and cans, he would save his money up and get a bus ticket and get on that bus, I don't know if it was a Greyhound bus or whatever, and go down to Washington to go to Capitol Hill. So he wasn't no stumble bump.
Yes, he was smart. That's what I'm saying.
So he was about wanting change, okay?
For the better. That's what I'm saying. He was something else.
This is his bio that he put on Twitter. Can and bottle recycler, autograph collector in New York City, and I would love to visit California. I'm a good businessman. Standing in line, waiting to vote. I love America. Is there a particular quality of Tim's that you might miss the most?
Just his kindness, his knowledge.
For him, remembering him trying to always teach you something and relating it to you learning that to tell the next generation, tell that younger generation.
That's right. He was about each one teach one.
Yeah.
He always had something important to say.
To the next generation.
Yeah.
That was important to him.
A day after murdering Timothy Kaufman, James Jackson turned himself in to police after he saw footage of himself on the news. Jackson told police that Kaufman had been a practice target and they intended to kill more black men. In court, what did it feel like when Tim's murderer came in and you saw him?
But I had
anger.
Yeah, anger, and I had like a knot in my stomach. I wanted him to feel pain that he gave me and the community.
The way he came out, chest out, head up, real proud.
When I seen him, I just started crying, and I couldn't stop. The color of his skin is that deep, you hate it that much? It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
According to detectives, a witness told them she heard Kaufman say after Jackson stabbed him, "Why are you doing this? What are you doing?"
This is what they handed out at the funeral. In memory of Timothy Kaufman, color does not attack color. Hate and prejudice are unnatural.
The murder of Timothy Kaufman could seem random and isolated, but the ideology of hate behind his killing seems to be growing. It was on display just a few months later when hundreds of white supremacists, white nationalists, and neo-Nazis gathered for a rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. They'd come from all over the country to protest the removal of a Confederate statue by local officials. Clashes with anti-racist demonstrators the next morning led the governor to declare a state of emergency. This forced rally organizers to move to a park a few miles away. One of the things we wanted to understand was if the rhetoric of the country's new president, Donald Trump, had emboldened these groups.
Media and a lot of people like to kind of be like, oh, it's Trump's fault or Trump that caused this. I would say Trump was a megaphone that we picked up, is the best way to describe it. The internet is where we live, and I'm moving us out of that. I'm kicking everyone off the internet, getting them out of here, getting them off their couches. My first objective is to create a white consciousness as well as a movement that's pro-white for white people.
Listening to the leaders speak gave us a window into the ideas that had drawn so many people here.
Now it's not over.
Never.
Now it's not over. The idea that I would ever back down when the governor of the state declares a state of emergency, if they think that, they don't understand what's in my heart. They don't understand the alt-right. They don't understand this entire movement.
The courage you showed today in defense of our people, our heritage, our country, our values, our freedoms will always remain in my memory in Charlottesville. This is a first step toward making a realization of something that Trump alluded to earlier in the campaign, which is this is the first step toward taking America back.
We're here to talk about white genocide, the deliberate and intentional displacement of the white race, which is happening. We love our people, we love Europe, we love America, we love white people, and that's why we're here. And there's nothing wrong with that!
Just after the speeches finished, James Fields, a neo-Nazi, drove his car through a crowd of anti-racist demonstrators, killing a young woman and injuring dozens of others.
We're closely following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville, Virginia. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
I think in many ways Charlottesville is our worst fears realized, right? We've just experienced the most racist campaign in modern history with Donald Trump, and it had the effect of energizing pretty much every faction of the extreme right in the United States. It's not surprising that this ended in violence, right? These are movements that are deeply connected to domestic terrorism and to hate crimes. This is a completely kind of predictable thing.
Real law! Yes, you do. Yes, you're weak. You are weak. You do not have enough testosterone to fight. You guys protect Muslims who hate you.
It's hard to make sense of the violence in Charlottesville and the way the hate and anger on display there is manifesting across the country. While government data shows that over half of all hate crimes go unreported, we still know that hate crimes and bias incidents have risen over the past few years, particularly those against the Muslim community, according to the FBI. In 2015, the last year federal data is available, anti-Muslim crimes rose 67% from the previous year.
You have 30 days to leave your residence. No one wants you there, and the U.S. government wishes you to be gone. Got it? Leave my mother city. Just leave, or you're all going to be in trouble.
That's part of a voicemail that was left at this small mosque in Eugene, Oregon. The man who left it called after he had already approached worshippers here one evening in May, threatening to kill them.
This is the first time in many years a person coming physically to the mosque and saying that he will kill Muslims. So, okay, we'll learn also, what do we say after the adhan?
Haitham is a member of the mosque and leads classes for the children. Many of the kids who attend the mosque witnessed the man threatening to kill worshippers. He was arrested the next day after he threatened someone else in a park nearby. He was released for time served after 2 months in jail. He's now out and free. Now that he's out, do you feel in danger again?
You know, to be honest, some of the kids also are traumatized by... There were like 3 kids that were hearing this. He was claiming he has weapon in his bag. I really can't imagine. You know, one of my fears, to be honest, is what if, you know, this situation happens to me in front of my kids that could apprehend, and I feel helpless. Go play with them. Go see what they're doing. We talked about, you know, even if somebody that hates you, we can't fight hate with hate. We focus on the actions implementing Islam or the teachings of Islam in our life. And one of them is with dealing with hate or, you know, dislike. What we're gonna do instead of hate?
We're gonna love each other.
And love will change the people even after a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a peculiar thing, though, because most young kids don't have to be taught how to respond to hate. I mean, my kids go to summer camp, and that's not a part of the curriculum.
Hate crimes are being on the rise, unfortunately. To be honest, Eugene has been a nice place. It's been changing a little bit, and being bullied in school or, you know, somewhere else is becoming as a norm those days, and teaching them how to respond is very important. All right, Noor, what would be an advice for all of us?
I would say that show love and compassion to everyone in face of all the hatred that's been happening lately.
When you consider what happened here and what happened just up the road at Portland on the train, does it make you feel targeted as a community?
Of course. You know, when incidents come after another, it raises a real issue in the community.
Just a few weeks after the threat to the Eugene Mosque, 2 men were killed on a metro train in Portland, Oregon, when they tried to stop a man from yelling at 2 black girls, one who was wearing a hijab. This is the man that killed them, Jeremy Christian, during his arraignment.
Death to the enemies of America. Leave this country if you hate our freedom.
This place has become a memorial to the 2 men and the 3rd who was wounded on May 24th on that attack.
Is he an active member of a group?
No, he wasn't. I mean, he sort of floated in and out, and he would show up at alt-right rallies. Those places will try to distance themselves from the extremists, but they also bring them on board at the same time. On the top level, it brings in a lot of people who are kind of mainstream. They just don't want to pay their taxes, or they're pro-gun, or, you know, they're sort of mainstream issues. And then you go farther down and it becomes kind of an anti-government ideology, and then it becomes an anti-Semitic ideology, and at the very bottom are sort of the Timothy McVeighs who believe that there's a need for a revolution, a second American revolution. And I think that's where Jeremy Christian was.
You call it terrorism, I call it patriotism. You hear me? Die.
Is it danger from the groups, or is it bubbling down to these individuals that are so much harder to track?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important question, because when they are organized and out as a group, we can see them, we can take their pictures, we know who the players are. It's the person who's sitting at home in front of their laptop that is getting angrier and angrier at the world. The world of hate has changed. There used to be organized hate groups that you became a member of. And those folks are still there, but their importance in the white supremacist counterculture has really dropped because of the internet, where people can kind of participate. There's a Klan rally happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week online that you can drop into anytime that you want.
Who are you?
I'm not talking about your name or your occupation. I'm talking about something bigger, something deeper.
The problem is that echo chamber really becomes a magnification chamber, and the more I'm in that world, the more angry I get and the more limited my explanations of what's happening. I have basically one explanation. You know, it's a conspiracy.
Some could say I'm a European. To be exiled.
And it's these people are the good people and these people are the bad people, and you get this kind of very black and white thinking, which is very appealing to young people, especially young males. And you get two things. One is you get a rationale of how the world works and who the bad people are, and the second is you get an action plan. You have to fight them.
In the case of James Jackson, after he was arrested, he told a New York newspaper that he only shared his views online, like that he believed, quote, the white race is being eroded. One of the sites he specifically mentioned was the white supremacist site, the Daily Stormer. All of this raises the question, what responsibility do tech companies have when it comes to dealing with hate speech online?
I think that the tech companies in general have not done enough to battle white supremacy on their networks. White supremacists are using major platforms to get their ideas out. There's nothing different about this than ISIS. We've been working with the tech companies to try to get them to take these issues more seriously, and maybe now, after Charlottesville, they will. I don't know. I don't know how many wake-up calls you need on this.
In the aftermath of Charlottesville, a number of sites, including the Daily Stormer, had their domain registrations revoked. But on the world's largest social media site, Facebook, there are deeper problems in the way hate speech can thrive.
Something like this, which is a mockery of the murder of this black child, they wouldn't take this down. They didn't take it down. For a very long time, I reported it dozens of times. And I think it came down eventually after several months.
Malkia Cyril is the director of the Center for Media Justice and an activist with Black Lives Matter in the Bay Area. Activists like Malkia have been working to make tech companies understand how to recognize racism on their platforms.
How does Facebook define hate speech?
Here, right here. Anything that directly attacks people based on what are known as their protected characteristics.
That seems straightforward, is that?
Yeah.
Is there a problem with it?
Yeah, it's a problem with it because race means that white is as protected a class as black, which the problem is when you live in a society where everything protects white people and very few things protect black people, making those two things equally protected doesn't work. It actually overprotects white people and underprotects black people.
What this often translates to is people of color being censored by Facebook for speaking out about racism.
While something like this is allowed to stay on Facebook, you have black activists that say things like, white supremacy is real. I mean, Leslie Mack, her post said something like that, right? And her post was taken down and she was banned. Algorithms are programmed by human beings, and human beings are not race neutral. Make America white again.
Look at that,
right.
Trump, make America white again.
This crosses the line, for example, and this is the kind of thing that I'm going to report this photo.
What's the message to you out of that photo?
Make America white again?
Yeah.
Get rid of me. I don't belong here. I don't have the right to live here, and by any means necessary, they're going to make sure I don't feel welcome. It's not a slur. It's not a call for violence explicitly, but when you say make America white again, how exactly do you plan on doing that?
It could be tempting to see all of this as solely related to Donald Trump. But it's more that the president has tapped into something that's been brewing for much longer.
2014 is when Black Lives Matter really began to take root. And that is when I think we began to see some real backlash.
In the year 2000, the Census Bureau announced for the first time ever that white people would be a minority. At that time, they said 2042. I think the date is somewhere around there. And that's the moment, basically, when we saw the number of hate groups in the United States start to rise.
That rise is reflected in attacks from the past decade. Like when a neo-Nazi killed 6 people at a Sikh temple in Wisconsin in 2012. And in 2014, when a white supremacist killed 3 people outside a Jewish retirement center. And in 2015, when Dylan Roof gunned down 9 African Americans in a church in Charleston, South Carolina. Overall, from 2001 up till the end of last year, there were 62 attacks in the U.S. by far-right violent extremists, according to government data. And in the same time period, there were 23 attacks by quote-unquote radical Islamist violent extremists. Despite that, since taking office, Trump has cut funding for groups that work to combat white supremacist and right-wing violence.
It's not just Trump who hasn't been serious enough about white supremacist domestic terrorism. During the Bush years, there was obviously this intense refocusing on radical Islam. I mean, more than 3,000 people died at the Twin Towers, and you can understand why that would be. What the Bush administration did was completely drop the efforts that were put in place after Oklahoma City to address white supremacy and kind of militia violence. The thing that makes it more problematic, I would argue, than radical Islam in the United States context, I'm not talking about overseas, is white supremacy is indigenous to this country. It was founded on white supremacy. We fought a civil war on white supremacy. Our first domestic terrorist group was the Ku Klux Klan that was set up after the Civil War ended in 1865. So this is an idea that's not going anywhere.
After Charlottesville, polling showed that the majority of people said that they didn't agree with the views of white supremacists or neo-Nazis. But almost 40% still said that they felt like white people were under attack in the U.S. And almost a third said that white European heritage needed to be protected in America.
Leave. Leave. You're not wanted here. He the one grabbed the gun. Start his hand to talk. He pulled the gun out. What's that? Be a man.
Blood and soil.
Hey, bud.
This is a white country.
This country was built for white folks, not you. This was never your country. You've always been oppressed in this country, and it's terrible. You should go.
Go back to Africa, like where all the. Look at your home countries. They're pieces of. They're holes.
What you say? What you say? To the police. They might be. Yeah, I understand.
There is a constant in America, which is change. We're a nation of immigrants. We're changing in terms of our demographic population. We're always going through this change, and the ability to manage that change is key to this. It's either exciting and adds to the diversity and strength of the nation, or there are people that want to make America great again. That has been manifested in many ways, including the alt-right having their rallies in public.
We're taking time off work to do this because it's important and it matters.
So what are y'all gonna do when you gotta go to work Monday around all the black people that you shake hands with and act like you ain't racist?
Leave America.
I can be here.
Leave it. This is our country.
Back to wherever you come from, lady. Y'all think you... Hey, tell them to go back where they belong.
But it's also manifesting in ways that are less obvious than rallies like Charlottesville. There seems to be a broader unraveling of civility happening in smaller ways across the country.
People just feel like it's open season now on anybody that doesn't fit their picture of who America is supposed to be.
Listen, I said, excuse me. Go back. Where you're from.
That mouthpiece, Donald Trump, is making it so that I think this deep, abiding resentment that I think has been brewing since the Civil War. This is not nothing new.
Obama's not in office anymore. We don't have a Muslim in there anymore. Yeah, I wish he was. He's gone. He's gone. Yeah. He may be in jail, too, in the future.
Now, in reaction to whatever small progressive wins they think we got under Obama, it has flourished. It is a full-fledged raging fire.
You don't just strike up a conversation with people in line talking about stuff like that if you're normal.
I'm very normal.
Yeah.
What Donald Trump opened the door to isn't just hate. Hate was there. He opened the door to turning that hate into a physical reality that threatens the lives of millions of people.
What are we gonna do from here? You know, what can we do from here?
Though James Jackson has been charged for taking their friend's life, Portia and Carl told us that they plan on going to every court appearance that they can until he's sentenced, to make sure the court knows that Timothy Kaufman was loved and that they want justice for him.
That's all we can do. Make sure he gets justice and try to prevent something like that happen again. You read it, you watch it on the news, and you turn to the next page. You know, I can't turn the page on this and, you know, just forget. I couldn't turn the page.
Tim was a great guy. He's done a lot for the community. We just don't want his name to be forgotten.